Everybody, Claire here from Business Geek. I wanted to come and talk to you today about monthly accounts and how they can add value in your business. So it's really common when I'm speaking to small business owners and also any leader in a business, not just the owner, but anybody perhaps in your team as well, that they see that accounts are something for accountants. And actually, accounts are really, really valuable in any business because they paint a picture and a story about what is actually happening in your business. So they can tell you not only how much sales you're doing and how much profit you're making, but they can also paint a picture and tell you where things are working and where things aren't working in your business. So from that perspective, it's really important that you've got your accounts on a regular basis. So a lot of businesses that I speak to, they'll be quite comfortable telling me about their sales number and their bank balance. And if you ask them about their profit, they'll generally refer to the year-end accounts that their accountant will do for them when it's time to do the tax return. And therein lies the problem. So my background is big business. I've worked in the corporate world for a number of years, as well as working with small businesses. And something that corporate businesses do really, really well, and small businesses can learn from, is having monthly accounts. So it's really common for them to be called management accounts, profit and loss. It's generally the same thing, but what we're referring to is accounts that would be used internally in your business on a monthly basis by you, rather than the accounts that are being prepared by your accountant at year end for your tax return. So there's just a very slight difference. So we'll call them the monthly management accounts. And if you don't have them at the moment, the first thing I would recommend is getting monthly management accounts. You could do it quarterly, but monthly would be ideally. So to do that, you need to make sure that you're either doing your own accounts on an online package like Xero, ClearBooks, QuickBooks, something like that. There's plenty of them out there. Or that you have a bookkeeper. And depending on the size of your business, you can get a bookkeeper usually from around £50 a month. It could cost up to a few hundred depending on how big you are and how many transactions you've got. But what a bookkeeper would do for you is they would put all of the transactions into the system. They would make sure that everything was up to date and everything was accurate. And then they would be able to provide for you out of something like Xero or ClearBooks, or out of your online software packages, you'll be able to download a profit and loss statement. And that profit and loss statement is very valuable to have on a monthly basis because it can tell you how much profit you're making. And that might sound like a really obvious thing, but if you don't know how much profit you're making on a monthly basis, you don't know whether you're on track to pay your mortgage, for example, at the end of the year. So that's really, really important to know where you are at all times. But also other things that you'll be able to see by having monthly accounts is unexpected costs. And it's really critical that you know about something to be able to take action and correct it. So if your costs are going up unexpectedly, for example, and you're not aware of that, then you can't take any action. So all of this type of thing will come out when you're looking at your monthly management accounts. You would see, oh, my costs are higher than expected. Let's have a little deeper dive into that, find out what's going on, take some actions and put the cost back on track for the rest of the year. And as I mentioned, as with unexpected costs, you could also have unexpected benefits in your business. And this is equally as important, that when something good happens, you learn from it, you unpick what exactly it was that made that benefit happen so that you can replicate that on a larger scale. So having these accounts on a monthly basis is all about looking at them, understanding what is and isn't working, and taking some actions to make sure that the business is moving forward in the right direction, and that when you get to year end, you've actually met your goals. You've made enough money, you've made the profit that you could have made, and that your costs were under control. So business owners generally are petrified of looking at their monthly accounts. So if you're feeling like this, you're definitely not alone. But what I would say is that it's a lot easier than you think to review your monthly management accounts. So I'll give you a few pointers. I'll assume that most of you are probably not doing this at all at the moment, so I'll start with the basics. And if you've got any questions about how you can look at specific things in your accounts, then feel free to drop me a message and I'll do my best to help you. So with management accounts or accounts in general, all they are is a list of categories and how much you have spent or how much money you've made against each category. So if you look down your account, you'll have things like admin costs and it will tell you how much you spent on admin. You'll have travel costs and it will tell you how much you spent on travel. So it really is just as simple as that. It's a little bit like writing a shopping list, for example. You know how much you spent on bread and milk and things like that. So it's not complicated, it feels complicated. So you always start at the top when you're reviewing your profit and loss statement. So at the very top of your profit and loss statement, you will have your income, then you will have your costs, and then right at the very bottom, your income less your costs equals your profit. So when you're looking at your profit and loss, you just want to start at the top and work your way down to the bottom. Okay, and when you're brand new to this, I would always say that it's important to have a couple of months at least that you're looking at. So we're now in the month of June, so you should have your management accounts for May right now. But looking at May alone in isolation doesn't really tell us much. We can only see how we've performed in May, and we don't know whether that performance is good or bad if we don't have history. So if I was looking at reviewing my accounts for May, I would also make sure that I've got March and April's information on there as well. And that just helps put some context on the numbers. So if you spent £1,000 on marketing, is that good or is that bad compared to prior months? And having several months visible at one time will be really helpful in doing that. And the great thing about online software packages is that they are very adaptable. You can change how many months you want to appear, what periods you want to appear. You can look over multiple years, you can look over multiple months. So they're really, really flexible. And finally, the next thing that I would recommend you do when you're looking at your profit and loss is to ask yourself, pick out a few of the bigger numbers and ask yourself what is driving those numbers. Because to get value out of your accounts, you need to understand the numbers. And it's things that you've done in your business, decisions that you've made to spend money, invest in areas or cut costs that come out in the accounts. So for example, you might have decided to spend, marketing is generally quite a big cost for several businesses. So if all of a sudden your marketing was £1,000 in April and it's now £1,500 in May, you need to have a look at that and try and decipher why has that cost gone up. Is it normal that cost has gone up? So how much did you spend on pay-per-click? How much on Facebook ads? How much on local magazines and things like that? So always pick out a couple of the bigger numbers and ask yourself to explain what's happened to that number, what happened in the business to drive that number in the direction that it's going in. So when you do that, you'll start to become much more familiar with the numbers and much more comfortable with the numbers. So they're my 3 tips for reviewing your profit and loss. So start at the top and work your way down and just look at it in a very logical order. Take your time. Always look over multiple periods so that you can add context, and always challenge yourself so that you know what's happened in the business to drive those numbers in the right direction. So as I said, there's an awful lot of value that you can get out of reviewing your accounts on a monthly basis. So if you're not doing it yet, make sure that you either get a bookkeeper or that you're doing your accounts yourself, because you definitely can't grow. You're not in a position to really make any significant investments or anything like that if you're not aware of where you are today. So getting your numbers on a monthly basis is the absolute start of that. So let me know in the comments below, have you got monthly management accounts? Have you got a bookkeeper? Let me know what you think about this and if you're comfortable reviewing your profit and loss or not. Speak to you soon.